Hello, Thursday, and I found some new volume. I hope it helps. First chart is at close of play in the US stock market and things last night. I just took this clip because I thought it was interesting that all down the left there, the Dow Jones, Nasdaq, going through the Japan's Nikkei, Stock Index Europe and UK FTSE, all were up. Not up a lot in the United States, but there was green in the United States. People were buying equities. Over on the top right, treasuries. People were buying treasuries as well. And down below in the futures for commodities, we have oil and gold both up as well. And checking on the details of the treasuries, you can see right across the curve, people were coming in and buying treasuries, really quite big at the long end. I thought that a bit strange. Anyway, moving on to the real stuff. And consumer confidence in the United States, July in red, August in blue. Consumer confidence index has dropped back an awful lot. It apparently has dropped back so much it becomes an indicator for people to buy things, because when it drops back this far it means it's overdone, because the people always get it wrong. But I don't think that really is the reason for the buying of yesterday, because this is all just too bad. But yes, the people do often get it wrong. Present situation index, how are we doing today, has dropped back slightly from where it was in July. Expectation, how are we going to do in the future, has dropped back horribly from how they thought it was going to be in the future. August's projections are frightening. Present situation conditions are good. No, they're not. Jobs are plentiful. No, they're not. Business conditions will improve. No, they won't. More jobs in the months ahead. No, there won't be. Increase in income. No, there won't be any of that either. That's what the people think. So a few facts on this. When it comes to real personal income, less transfer payments, and that's quite important. Now these are percentages of their previous peak, because in the past people always got back to their previous peak, because that's the way life has always been. Growth is always inherent in the system. It grows all the time. It's unstoppable. It's totally sustainable forever and ever. But it seems through this great recession there was a huge down in real personal incomes, less transfer payments, and they are nowhere back to where they were at the start of 2008. Nowhere near back. Next, link number 4 is welcoming Martin Wolf back from his holidays, and he's writing again for the Financial Times, and this is his returning opening paragraph. What has the market turmoil of August now coming to an end, been telling us? The answer, I suggest, is 3 big things. First, the debt encumbered economies of the high-income countries, that's us, remain extremely fragile. I think that's code for could well turn to shit. Second, investors have next to no confidence in the ability of our policymakers to resolve the difficulties. That's us, yeah. And third, in a time of high anxiety, investors prefer what are seen as the least risky assets, namely the bonds of the most highly rated governments, regardless of their deficits, together with gold. Those who fear deflation by bonds, and those who fear inflation by gold, those who cannot decide buy both. But few investors or corporate managers wish to take on any longer-term investment risks. Very important. But few investors or corporate managers wish to take on any longer-term investment risks, because corporate managers and long-term investors our people as well. Project Syndicate, Brad DeLong, often a bit wonkish and over-technical for us, gives us an article entitled Ben Bernanke's Dream World, and I've dragged a few paragraphs from it to give us an idea of how Brad thinks. He writes, "Frankly, I do not understand how Bernanke can say any of these things right now, and this is from the middle of the article, so you'd have to follow the link to see what he's actually referring to there. If he and the rest of the Federal Open Mouth Committee thought that the projected growth of nominal spending in the US was on an appropriate recovery path 2 months ago, they cannot believe that today. 2 months of bad economic news coupled with asset markets' severe revaluations of the future, which also cause slower future growth, as falling asset prices lead firms to scale back investment, mean that a policy that was appropriate just 60 days ago is much too austere today." But let me focus on Bernanke's fourth statement. Even if we project a relatively rapid economic recovery, by the time this lesser depression is over, the US will have experienced an investment shortfall of at least $4 trillion. Until that investment shortfall is made up, the missing capital will serve to depress the level of real GDP in the US by 2 full percentage points. America's growth trajectory will be 2% below what it would have been had the financial crisis been successfully finessed and the lesser depression avoided. There is more. State and local budget cutting has slowed America's pace of investment in human capital and infrastructure, adding a 3rd percentage point to the downward shift in the country's long-term growth trajectory. After the Great Depression of the 1930s, the vast wave of investment in industrial capacity during World War II made up the shortfall of the lost decade. As a result, the Depression did not cast a shadow on future growth, or rather the shadow was overwhelmed by the blinding floodlights of 5 years of mobilization for total war against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. What he's trying to say is here, we are going into this depression and we're not spending on anything, not on human capital or industrial capital. And what caused this in the past was spending on neither either. It was just spending on frippery, like frippery, going on holiday or bidding up the price of housing. The Western economies have been hollowed out and there's no sign that anyone's going to put any stuffing back in them at all. Calculated risk. The Case-Shiller Home Price Index increased in June. Look at the chart. Do you see the increase? No, nor do I. Another chart, this time is the Conference Board Index of how people feel about things going back a goodly while. The Conference Board Index implies a recession of 1973-74 severity as per the attached chart. In other words, the double dip will be roughly of that size. Whilst the data clearly disappointed against consensus estimates, it is exactly in line with the Michigan overlay, the Philly overlay, or the ISM Forward Index overlay, and therefore should not be dismissed out of hand. In other words, the Conference Board has just come in and confirmed all the bad news that Brad DeLong there was telling us that he's seen as well. Yesterday's pickup in consumer spending, yeah, that actually happened, was financed by a drop in the savings ratio. Had that drop been accompanied by improved consumer confidence, it could have been interpreted positively. But the fact that the confidence is falling would suggest that the fall in savings is necessary for people to continue to survive. Savings have gone down, spending's gone up, but they're having to tap their savings or take on more debt just to survive. Not good. Rick Bookstabber gives us our finishing link. Workers of the world, good night. And he starts with, I spent the 1981-82 school year in Israel as a visiting professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem through a Fulbright fellowship. This was the year of the bombing of the Osirak nuclear reactor near Baghdad and the Lebanon War. Though less threatening than the 1967 Six-Day War and the 1974 Yom Kippur War, the cost of lives was palpable because of the small size of Israel and the many interrelationships of its society. Our babysitter there, still a high school student, had 6 friends killed. One of the professors that I worked with at the Hebrew University lost a son, a mathematician, who served as a tank commander. There are not many countries where tank commanders hold PhDs in mathematics. Have you seen the fuss in Israel? Street riots? What riots? Street manifestations? Quite big. Very shocking for Israel because of the disparity in living standards. There is a hyper-rich and the rest are struggling. At the end of this article, he sums up by saying, and there's the change in manufacturing in the US, this is. Since the 2000, US manufacturing has lost a third of its jobs. As Peck notes, the real median wages of men have fallen by 32% since their peak in 1973, once you account for those that have become unemployed. Part of this is due to global competition, but part of it is increased efficiency and a move towards products that are less labour-intensive. We have remained preeminent in agriculture in the United States, even though now only 2% of the US workforce are farmers. The same might now be occurring in industry. Also, there is what I have called the consumption trap. As more of our time is spent in the virtual world, there is a dwindling demand for goods that are labour and capital intensive. Marx considered the role of labour and capital during the Industrial Revolution and called capital the king and workers the subjugated. Now we may be moving into an era of capitalism where capital and workers become incidental. What we have is so much money swilling around the world that no one knows seemingly what to do with it. And there are so many people now in the world that no one seems to know what to do with them. And this is a very big problem. See you tomorrow. Bye.